You know that feeling when you look at the English competency test and your brain just kind of freezes? Yeah, you're not alone. In this explainer, we're going to break the whole thing down and give you a super clear roadmap to help you navigate every single section.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with a bird's eye view of the test, then we'll dive deep into each of the 4 main sections. And to wrap it all up, we'll talk about the single most important next step you need to take. Okay, first things first, let's zoom out and get the big picture. Instead of thinking about this as one huge, scary test, I want you to see it as 4 smaller challenges. Each one is built to test a very specific skill, which is actually great news when you're planning how to study.
So, what are we really up against? Well, at its core, the test is split into these 4 key areas: reading, listening, grammar, and writing. And trust me, knowing this is everything, because you can't just use the same strategy for each one. To really conquer this test, you've got to master each of these skills individually.
Let's jump right into our first section, reading. This is where the test is looking at more than just whether you can read English. It's really digging into how well you can understand and pull apart written information.
What this is really saying is that this section goes way beyond just reading the words on the page. You're being tested on 3 things. Can you truly get what the text is about? Can you pull out the most important facts? And can you put it all together to figure out the main point?
This means you can't just read it like you'd read a novel. Nope. You have to read with a mission. You've got to be scanning for keywords, hunting for important details, and figuring out what the author is trying to say. And you have to do it all while the clock is ticking.
Okay, so from reading with our eyes, we're switching gears to listening with our ears. This section tests a completely different set of skills. Basically, how well you can process spoken English as it's happening, live.
So the real challenge here is to follow along with conversations and different audio clips, paying super close attention to the little details, the speaker's tone, and what they're really trying to say. You'll hear all sorts of things, so you have to be ready to adapt.
You know, the secret weapon for this whole section is something called active listening. And the good news is it's a skill you can totally train. It's all about learning to focus intently on the important stuff and filter out everything else, all the background noise and distractions.
All right, let's talk about grammar. This is where the test gets down to the nitty-gritty. It's less about understanding big, sweeping ideas and much more about the technical rules that hold the entire English language together. Think of it as the nuts and bolts.
This section really zeroes in on the most common mistakes people tend to make. So you're going to be tested on things like verb tenses, pronouns, prepositions, basically your overall accuracy. These really are the fundamental building blocks for speaking and writing clearly.
Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about: subject-verb agreement. It's the simple difference between she writes and they write. Seems pretty basic, right? But the grammar section is packed with these tiny details that actually make a huge difference.
And that brings us to our final section, writing. Now, this is your chance to really shine. Instead of just analyzing what someone else wrote, you get to create something yourself and show how well you can build clear and solid ideas from scratch.
The name of the game in this section is to be both clear and concise. You're not writing a book here. You're just crafting a short, focused paragraph or a really precise answer, all while that clock is ticking away.
Honestly, this section is a real balancing act. You have to be fast enough to get your thoughts in order, but you also have to be clear enough to express those ideas in a way that makes sense. To do well here, you absolutely have to master both speed and structure.
So, we've walked through reading, listening, grammar, and writing. But here's the thing. Knowing what's on the test is only half the battle. Now we need to talk about the one skill that holds it all together: smart time management.
This leads us to the million-dollar question, right? It's great to know what's in every section, but how do you actually manage your time so you can get through it all without panicking at the end? How do you make sure you don't run out of time?
And that is exactly what we are going to break down in our very next explainer. We're going to give you some powerful step-by-step strategies to help you manage your time like a pro in every single section. You are not going to want to miss it. I'll see you then.